Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So we have a new round of balance updates, Beta Bill and Enchantress, and this is quite interesting because we do have one of the most impactful champions in the game that quickly shot up to the staple status as a defender, and we do have one of the least consequential releases of the year, effectively in Beta Bill. Now, I do know that there are some people who love and enjoy using Beta Bill, but objectively speaking, he has close to zero meta impact. He can do some cool stuff, but most of the time the stuff that he does just isn't really needed or handy or required in any, meaningful competitive scenario. The best use of Beta Bill so far has been for one of the Autumn of Agony fights, and that was primarily because he fit an objective. Right. So, the long story short is Kabam's perfectly happy with both their champions, and neither one of them is getting adjusted, which in itself is quite interesting because, again, that just kind of shows that Kabam's releasing champions that they think should be mediocre or, hardly ever used by majority of the player base, and then they are releasing champions who are giving nightmares to just about everybody in the community, and they are perfectly happy with that too. Because again, these champions couldn't be quite a bit further apart in terms of their, use and usefulness from 2025 releases. So let's start with Beta Bill and then comment on that. So Beta Bill stormed into the contest equipped with a trio of new abilities: Pulverize, Steady, and Grit. Let's agree to that. He stormed into the contest. There was a huge amount of hype for Beta Bill upon release, and a unique playstyle allowing players to channel the power of Stormbreaker and its high damage potential. That's kind of the problem as well. It's too finicky a bit for that to be something you want to deal with whilst tackling the hardest defenders in the game. While Beta Bill's damage loop isn't at its best in Battlegrounds, absolutely, he found a lot of success in Alliance War with his utility living up favorably into a handful of main straight tank defenders. That is also exaggerated, I feel. I have hardly ever seen him in Alliance War. Okay, I mean, I know that a handful of times maybe, but he's far from a staple Alliance War attacker. If I'm honest, I don't think I have seen him assigned in our battle group. And we played tier 1 wars, but maybe once? Okay, anyways. Main straight tech defenders. We're also happy to see Beta Bill thrive in longer fights, where he has the space to set up his spike and his opponent can be shocked. Well, that's kind of the problem in itself. Again, shock is by nature one of the shittiest dots, so I think that immediately, if a champion is shock damage reliant, I personally put it into the category of minus, because shock is kind of the shittiest dot, and I can't get tired of talking about it, because there is a huge amount of shock immune champions, there is a significant amount of meta relevant champions that are getting powered or punish you for using shock, such as, Bishop and Havoc and Onslaught and so on. And then there is a significant amount of energy resistant champions as well. So, additionally to all of that, shock is like one of the very few dots that does not have a secondary ability at all. Like, it doesn't stop a weight like Cold Snap or reduce your block proficiency like Incinerate and so on and so forth. So, Bill's threat as defender are fairly low impact, and we're also seeing that reflected in his performance so far. Yeah, he's, useless on defense. So, ultimately, Beta Bill in longer fights, we have certainly seen that he can do them. We haven't seen many people do it other than wanting to make a video. Like, I would love to see the number of people who, for instance, have done Necropolis paths with Beta Bill, aside from content creators. I don't think there's many. Because again, champions that excel in longer fights have to compete with a ton of other champions that excel in longer fights. Unless he is the most convenient option, nobody's going to use Beta Bill. And even if he is one of the best options, people will still tend towards the champions that are good in short and long form fights. You know, I personally would rank 3, I don't know, any other champion that can do, like for instance, Serpent. Serpent's great for Necropolis. He excels in long form content as well, but has defensive value and is, you know, amazing. Over Better Bill any day. I wouldn't even give it a thought. And I think this kind of settles the fact that I think Beta Bill is gonna be a fairly niche champion that some people like and occasionally others whip out. Perfectly fine living at rank 2 max, no need to overly invest in him, and is probably gonna gather dust for like, you know, 95% of the time you are in this contest or even more. But Kabam feels that he's perfectly fine and staying as is. Now, after this alleged Beta Bill slander, we need to move to Enchantress. Oh boy. The Valorant's newest spellcaster had the target of adding a new top defensive threat to the Mystic class, while also being strong attacking option in longer fights. And again, she kind of is, but nobody's ever going to use her because there are far better options for longer fights. Like, when Wong exists, when a ton of other, you know, champions exist that are great in longer fights, nobody can, like, again, I do believe 99% of the players who have Enchantress and have her ranked up will not learn her spells. Unless there's something absolute, unless there's specific Enchantress event where you have no other choice, people will just not do it. Because why bother? She's not better than many existing, much easier to use champions for long form content. And she's absolutely shit in short form content. In other words, there's absolutely no reason to actually use her offensively. Alright. Attacking option in longer fights where the players have the runway to flex their spellcasting skills. Enchantress' defensive spells in combination with her objective casting ability pressures incoming attackers to quickly adapt their game plan or suffer punishment for damage reflection. Enchantress quickly became defensive staple in Battlegrounds decks with high adoption rates and strong defensive performance to match. Her matchup spread and overall effectiveness here is positive and on target for her goals. We're continually seeing players adapt to the matchup with a variety of champions from Science class. Enchantress has also found a few nasty spots in Alliance War map. Heavy hitter plus transmutation spells make a few for a tricky time. And as a response, we're also seeing players flex their creativity skills in countering her. Overall, her defensive impact on the meta has been on target. What the fuck? And we're happy with how she's played out so far. As noted above, Enchantress thrives when she has the runway to stack her spells. We are happy to see that reflected in the attacker usage and performance. I wonder how many people are actually using Enchantress on attack and doing it well. Like 20? 15? I would love to do that number. Recent quest and challenges, such as our seasonal pain quest and Necropolis challenges, have given Summoners plenty of space to capitalize on her flexibility and control when ramped up. No change incoming to Enchantress. You could expect communication about Shatra and Count Nefarious balance review towards middle of the February. So here's what I think is bullshit. I have ranted about Enchantress in no less than 5 different videos. I do not want to go the entire rabbit hole. But ultimately, my stance on Enchantress is that she's bad for the game. I wish she was not made. I firmly believe the game would be better, more enjoyable, should Enchantress not exist. Same goes to Serpent in his current form, and Bullseye as well, even though I'm kind of like, you know, less mad about Bullseye, but I still do not like the design trend. I do not like the design trend of Photon and Dust taking away your willpower mastery. I certainly do not like the design trend of Enchantress, Serpent, and Bullseye as well. The worst part about Enchantress is the RNG aspect to it. There is, like, quite literally no champions will counter Enchantress, like, guaranteed. Like, any fight against Enchantress can go very wrong very fast. And that entirely depends on, number one, what type of spells you get. Because um, if like they're all different ones, and if you do get the worst ones where you have to punish the heavy, and then for instance you have to deal with miss, that means there's just like photon or something like that can bypass miss and punish that heavy reliably, or you can get smacked in the face. Or, there can be those evades on the punish where opponent will just choose to evade after that heavy attack. And it's entirely dependent on RNG. Then again, depending on which spells she gets, it's RNG whether you can actually punish that heavy attack, for instance. It is AI dependent whether you can get that intercept, because sometimes AI just, doesn't come in for an intercept. And you have a very, very limited number of attempts to land that intercept, because as soon as she gets over bar power, you're kind of screwed. And then it's shit. And then I want to talk about the extra nodes that, if she by any chance gains extra power, you effectively have 0 time to get rid of the spells and you're screwed. So the way it stands right now, I would have thought Kabam is going to maybe adjust her defensive spells a little bit to take the RNG out of it. For instance, get lower or get rid of that miss chance, for instance. Or at the very least, switch it off straight after the heavy punish. So you do not have a chance to, bait out a heavy attack, miss, and get smacked in the face. Or the same thing for evade. Or do something to make her less of an RNG fight. Because she is awful as is. And I also think it speaks volumes that Kabam release absolute bullshit defenders that are making this game into a card game, effectively. Because these are not champions, like Korg or like even Photon to a degree, where as long as you have a half-decent counter, it might be a very difficult fight to pull off, but you can, skill your way through Korg fight with many champions, just getting those light intercepts and clear the rock sacks, then go for massive damage. It's like, yeah, it can go wrong because of AI and everything else, but you have a chance. And obviously, you still have plenty of counters that, make Korg automatic, for instance, or that make Photon borderline automatic, for instance. These are not champions like that. They are champions where, unless you have a great counter, you're just dead and you lose. And that is making this in more of a card game rather than a fighting game. And that is the main reason why I think these are, bullshit champions. Because obviously Kabam is releasing these champions like Serpent, and they're going to sell like 50 counters to them. But down the line, that's the entire reason why Domino is still relevant that many years later. Unless you have a very potent purpose counter for Domino, you're still going to lose that match 9 times out of 10. Look at the current meta. There are 2 good Domino counters that you can use to get decent score. Or you get an automatic L then. Because not all the counters work in every metas under every node combinations and so on and so forth. And there's the reason why Domino is still as present as she is. Because it's either you counter or you're dead. Or you lose. And it's the same with all 3 of these, Enchantress, Serpent, and Bullseye. And that is bad, very bad for the game. You should be able to do decently well against them entirely by skill, like you can against, Iron Man Infinity War, like you can against Korg, like you can against Photon even, you can even against Onslaught, for instance. Yeah, those are hard fights, but you can fight your way through them. And that is not the case with Bullseye, Enchantress, and Serpent. It's unless you have a purpose counter to these fights, you're just done and you lose. And what's making Enchantress even worse, and in some degrees I have heard people say that they hate Enchantress more than Serpent and so on. It's because she's just so goddamn RNG. She really, really is. If AI is not playing ball, if you get the worst spell, mechanics, if she's getting any extra power from nodes or anything else, there's just not much you can do even with a counter. Similar to Serpent, to be honest, because even now, and given how many metas, Serpent is just basically an auto win. Right now. how many times you have fought Serpent and won the round, even if you have a counter in the current Battlegrounds betas. It's just stupid. So, it's like, why pretend to have a balance program then? At this point, really, why do you pretend that, you know, you care about balance? Because clearly, not all champions are created equal. Clearly, we have somebody who hardly anybody gives a shit about, and Kabam's happy about it. You know, if we compare how many people who have baited their bill have taken him to rank 3 and are using him, and then we compare how many people who are Enchantress have ranked up the Enchantress. These champions are not equal. These champions are not equally balanced. The same way where we have Serpent, where Kabam said is perfectly balanced and they're happy with him, and we have Leader, who they also say is perfectly balanced. Like, one of these things is not like the other. The same thing with Bait Bill. He's nowhere near good as, you know, potent as Enchantress is. But both of them are equally and perfectly balanced, and Kabam's happy with them. So let me know what you guys think about all of this stuff. I think it's bullshit. But there we go. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about